Lust, the silent battlefield of the chosen. No one talks about it, but every awakened soul has faced it. The deeper your spiritual awareness grows, the stronger your desires become. The same fire that fuels divine purpose also fuels temptation. It's not weakness, it's raw, unfiltered energy trying to find its higher form. Most people drown in lust without ever questioning it, but the chosen can't escape its weight. Because their energy is sacred, their desires are magnified. What others call pleasure, they experience as spiritual warfare, a constant pull between the flesh and the spirit. And that's the hidden truth no one dares to admit. The closer you get to the light, the louder the shadows become. The chosen don't struggle with lust because they are impure. They struggle because they are powerful. Their life force was meant to create worlds, not waste in temptation. In this video, we'll expose the real reasons why chosen ones secretly wrestle with lust, and how that battle becomes the forge of their transformation. Subscribe to join the Guru Clan, a brotherhood of awakened warriors mastering energy, purpose, and desire. Comment below. Do you battle lust as part of your awakening journey? 1. Because spiritual power amplifies desire. The more awake you become, the more everything intensifies. Awareness is expansion, and when your consciousness expands, so does your energy. Every emotion, every thought, every desire becomes amplified. What once felt like a spark now feels like fire. What once was a whisper becomes a storm. For the chosen, this is both blessing and burden. You don't just feel, you absorb. You don't just want, you burn. The same energy that awakens your purpose also awakens your passion. The same force that fuels divine creation fuels carnal desire. It's the same current, only directed through different channels. That's why the chosen often find themselves torn between heaven and earth. The deeper they go into spiritual awakening, the stronger the pull of the physical becomes. It's not contradiction, it's polarity. The light expands and so does the shadow. The more connected you become to divine energy, the more your body becomes aware of its own power. That power manifests as intensity and often as lust. But here's the truth most don't understand. Lust is not the enemy. It's energy, raw, sacred life force, waiting to be mastered. The chosen carry an amplified current of creative power, what the ancients called kundalini. It's the serpent energy coiled at the base of the spine, designed to rise, not to be wasted. When misdirected, it becomes lust. When mastered, it becomes enlightenment. This is why chosen ones often experience extreme inner conflict. They can feel divine energy moving through them, but without discipline and awareness, that energy flows into the lowest form of expression, desire. Not because they are weak, but because they are charged. They're not slaves to temptation. They're magnets for it. Their energy attracts everything, both light and dark, because it's potent. The average person experiences desire as instinct. The chosen experience it as a calling, a deep ache that feels cosmic, spiritual, almost unbearable. It's not just attraction. It's recognition. It's creation seeking expression. And without mastery, that expression defaults to lust. But here's the hidden truth. The chaos of lust is actually the language of creation misunderstood. That fire inside is not asking for indulgence, it's asking for transformation. It's energy knocking on the door of purpose, saying, "Use me." The problem is, the world doesn't teach mastery. It teaches indulgence. Everywhere you look, that sacred force is hijacked, perverted, and sold back as entertainment. The chosen feel this more than anyone. They sense how society keeps people trapped in a loop of desire, always chasing stimulation, never channeling power. Every image, every distraction, every temptation is designed to drain the chosen of their life force. Because if you control a person's desire, you control their destiny. So the spiritually awake must learn a different path, the path of transmutation. Instead of suppressing desire or drowning in it, they must redirect it through creation, through purpose, through discipline. Lust, when harnessed, becomes fuel for mastery. The same fire that tempts can be turned into focus. The same passion that consumes can be transformed into creation. That's the secret of the chosen. Their lust isn't something to be ashamed of. It's proof of their power. It's the raw, untamed evidence of how alive their energy truly is. The more spiritual you become, the more sensitive your body becomes to energy, to attraction, to vibration. You're not broken for feeling it. You're powerful for being able to sense it. The challenge is to wield it. To be chosen is to walk with fire in your veins and light in your heart, and to learn how to balance the two. Because unchecked, that fire destroys. But mastered, it creates worlds. Lust for the awakened is not a curse, it's a mirror. It shows you where your energy is leaking. It reveals what you've yet to control. It tests your ability to rise above instinct and move into intention. And when the chosen finally understand that their intensity is not weakness but potential, the battle with lust transforms. They stop running from it. They stop judging it. They start alchemizing it, turning chaos into creativity, hunger into discipline, and desire into divine purpose. Because spiritual power doesn't eliminate desire, it amplifies it. But the awakened don't burn in that fire. They learn to forge with it. 2. Because lust is the shadow of divine union. Lust is not evil. It is sacred energy misunderstood, divine fire misdirected through human limitation. It's the same force that creates galaxies, births art, moves oceans, and stirs the heart toward union. But when that force gets trapped in the lower self, in fear, ego, or physical obsession, it distorts into lust. What was meant to unite becomes something that consumes. The chosen feel this distortion more intensely than anyone else, because their energy wasn't designed to live small. It's cosmic in origin, spiritual in nature, and deeply creative. Their souls were built for connection, not just with people, but with the divine itself. The desire they feel isn't just for flesh. It's for merging, for wholeness, for oneness. But when that energy has nowhere spiritual to go, it collapses into the physical form. It becomes lust, the shadow of divine union. Most people experience lust as chemistry, a natural biological drive. But for the awakened, it's deeper, almost unbearable. It feels sacred and sinful at the same time. The body burns, not just with desire, but with recognition, as if the soul remembers something ancient, something holy, something lost. The mistake is not the desire itself, but the direction it takes. When divine energy is misunderstood, it becomes addiction instead of ascension. The world, however, doesn't teach the chosen how to channel that power. It teaches suppression or indulgence, both extremes that lead to imbalance. Suppression turns fire into shame. Indulgence turns fire into destruction. But the real path is mastery, the art of directing that divine current upward instead of outward. Lust, when left unchecked, drags the chosen down into the lower frequencies of existence, repetition, craving, guilt, emptiness. But when consciously redirected, that same energy becomes fuel for enlightenment. The ancients called this alchemy sexual transmutation, turning desire into devotion, instinct into creation, and longing into divine connection. This is why the chosen often walk a lonely path. They crave a level of intimacy most people cannot understand. They long not just to touch, but to merge, not just to be seen, but to be known, spirit to spirit, soul to soul. And when they can't find that kind of connection, they feel the ache of misalignment. The energy builds, and without sacred outlet, it spills into temptation. But what feels like temptation is really misdirection, divine energy looking for its rightful path home. The chosen's challenge is not to destroy desire, but to understand it, to see that every moment of lust is really a mirror, showing where the soul is seeking reunion with its source. When they finally recognize that everything changes, they stop labeling desire as sin and start seeing it as signal. They realize that lust isn't proof of impurity, it's proof of potential. It's the body's way of saying, your energy is ready to create something divine if you'll only rise above instinct. The chosen begin to practice awareness. They learn to breathe through the fire instead of feeding it. They learn to sit in that intensity until it becomes stillness. They redirect the current into art, discipline, purpose, prayer, creativity. In doing so, they discover the hidden power beneath the urge, sacred union with the divine itself. Because the truth is, lust and love are two sides of the same current. One enslaves, the other liberates. One consumes, the other transcends. The only difference is direction. Lust pulls downward, into need, into hunger, into body. Love ascends into expansion, into harmony, into soul. And when the chosen master that direction, they stop fearing desire. They start transmuting it. They understand that what they've been calling lust was never corruption. It was creation waiting to evolve. The chosen's task is to bring heaven and earth into balance, to turn raw energy into radiant expression, to merge instinct with awareness. They were never meant to kill desire. They were meant to redeem it, because lust is not the opposite of holiness. It's holiness that's forgotten what it is. And when the chosen remember, lust no longer controls them. It becomes light, the shadow of divine union, finally transformed back into love. 3. Because the matrix uses pleasure as a trap, the world doesn't fear your goodness, it fears your power. And for the chosen, power begins with energy, pure, creative, divine life force. The same energy that fuels purpose, creation, and awakening is the one that fuels desire. That's why the world, the matrix, doesn't try to destroy you outright. It seduces you. It drains you. It feeds you illusions of pleasure so that you never remember your true strength. Lust in the modern world is no longer natural. It's weaponized. The system knows that if you can't control your desire, you can be controlled through it. It knows that your spiritual energy, your life force, is the most valuable resource you have. So it floods your senses with endless stimulation, screens, images, bodies, temptation at every turn. What once was sacred has become a commodity. and the chosen feel this assault more deeply than anyone else. They can sense that something is off, that pleasure has been corrupted into poison, that the world's obsession with indulgence is not freedom, but enslavement. Every image, every fantasy, every temptation is a siphon, draining divine energy and converting it into distraction. The matrix keeps divine beings trapped in cycles of craving, because craving keeps them weak. It's not that pleasure itself is evil. Pleasure is sacred when it's conscious. But when it's constant, compulsive, and unconscious, it becomes a cage. The chosen were meant to create worlds, but instead, the matrix tempts them to consume endlessly. Every time they give in without awareness, they lose a piece of their focus, a drop of their power, a spark of their divine clarity. And that's the real war, not against desire, but against enslavement through desire. The chosen's challenge isn't to hate the body or suppress instinct, but to reclaim ownership of their energy, to remember that their attention is currency, their desire is sacred, and their essence is divine. The matrix doesn't want you still. It doesn't want you silent, because in stillness you see clearly. In silence you remember who you are, but in constant pleasure, in endless stimulation, you forget. You become addicted to the noise. You mistake the illusion of satisfaction for fulfillment, and you never look deeper. For the chosen, this realization is painful. You begin to see how the world trains people to worship lust while starving their souls, how entire industries profit from spiritual amnesia. You notice how technology, entertainment, and even culture are built to hijack the same energy that could awaken you, to sell it back in fragments. You realize that lust has become the matrix's most effective leash. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. You begin to feel the subtle manipulation behind what most call freedom. You notice how craving is marketed as empowerment. You see how the world glorifies indulgence while demonizing discipline. You understand that true rebellion isn't indulgence, it's mastery. The chosen begin to reclaim their energy through awareness. Every time they resist unconscious pleasure, their light grows stronger. Every time they choose silence over stimulation, creation over consumption, purpose over impulse, they rise. The matrix loses its grip, because the system can only enslave those who can't govern themselves. This is why discipline, purity, and restraint are sacred. Not because they are moral, but because they are liberating. Every act of self-mastery is an act of spiritual rebellion. Every moment of control is an act of remembrance. You begin to see that the real pleasure is not in losing yourself, but in finding yourself again, clear, centered, and sovereign. The awakened learn that pleasure is not the enemy. It's a tool. It can heal or harm, liberate or enslave, depending on who wields it. The matrix wants you to consume unconsciously. The awakened use it consciously. They channel the same energy into creation, love, art, purpose, and transformation. Because the war was never about denying desire. It was about defending your divinity. The chosen were never meant to be slaves to their impulses. They were meant to command them, to turn temptation into transcendence, to take back the very energy the matrix uses to control them, and use it to awaken the world instead. That is true rebellion. That is true freedom. 4. Because they mistake energy for emotion. There are moments when a chosen one meets someone and instantly feels it, that unexplainable pull, that surge of electricity that feels like destiny. It's magnetic, undeniable, almost divine. The heart races, the body reacts, and the mind whispers, "This must be love." But most of the time, it's not love, it's energy. A deep spiritual recognition being misinterpreted as emotion. The awakened are sensitive beings. Their energy field is open, expanded, tuned to frequencies most people never feel. So when they meet another person carrying energy that mirrors or complements their own, they don't just notice it, they absorb it. They feel the other person's essence like a vibration running through their own soul. It's not chemistry in the worldly sense, it's resonance. But without awareness, that resonance gets filtered through the body and mistaken for physical attraction. The chosen often confuse spiritual merging with sexual desire. The soul is recognizing itself in another, but the mind, ruled by conditioning and instinct, translates that connection as lust. The result is chaos. The divine becomes distorted by human perception. The sacred moment becomes a craving instead of a calling. This is one of the most painful traps for awakened beings. When genuine spiritual connection gets lost in physical obsession, you feel pulled toward someone, not realizing that what's drawing you isn't their body, but their energy. It's your soul remembering something ancient, a shared vibration, a karmic thread, a mirror of your own light. The confusion begins when the ego claims what the soul merely recognized. When the chosen lack awareness, they fall into patterns of intensity, relationships that start with fire and end with emptiness. They mistake recognition for destiny and attraction for love. They don't realize that what they crave isn't physical intimacy, but energetic union, the merging of frequencies, not flesh. The irony is that the more spiritually awake you are, the more powerful this pull becomes. Because your energy field is stronger, your recognition sharper. You feel everything, the truth, the lies, the fear, the desire. You feel the other person's wounds and longing as if they were your own. Without grounding, that intensity overwhelms you and becomes lust. But lust, in this case, isn't about wanting the body. It's about wanting to feel that energy again. It's the desire to merge with the frequency that reminded you of something sacred. The problem is, when the chosen try to fulfill that through physical means, they end up feeling drained instead of whole. Because the body can imitate connection, but it can't sustain it. This is how many chosen ones learn the hard way, by confusing energy for emotion and emotion for destiny. They chase what they already have within. They try to possess what was only meant to awaken them. Eventually, the pain becomes the lesson. You begin to see that not every deep connection is meant to be a relationship. Some souls come into your life to ignite remembrance, not romance. They awaken energy in you that was dormant, forcing you to evolve. What feels like love is often initiation. When the chosen gain awareness, they stop reacting to every energetic pull. They learn to observe without attaching, to feel without chasing. They recognize that intensity doesn't always mean alignment. Sometimes it's just resonance, two frequencies crossing paths, not two souls merging destinies. The more you evolve, the more you realize that not every connection is meant to be kept. Some are meant to be understood. They teach you how to manage your energy, how to discern your emotions, and how to separate spiritual recognition from human craving. This awareness transforms everything. What once burned with confusion now glows with clarity. You begin to honor connections without needing to claim them. You can meet someone whose energy feels like home and still let them go with peace. Because love, when awakened, doesn't need possession or explanation. It simply recognizes, blesses, and releases. The chosen must remember, not every vibration that moves you is meant to be followed. Not every spark is meant to become a fire. What feels like desire is often just energy seeking balance. What feels like love is often remembrance of what you already are. And once you see this clearly, lust dissolves into awareness, and awareness becomes peace. 5. Because lust is the final test before mastery, every chosen one, at some point, must walk through the fire of temptation, of longing, of raw desire. It's not punishment, it's initiation. Lust is not the enemy of the chosen. It is the test that determines whether they have learned to master their own energy, or still serve it blindly. It is the final gate between spiritual power and divine purity. You can meditate for years, fast for weeks, and speak of discipline, but none of it means anything until you confront desire face to face and remain unshaken, because lust is where theory becomes practice. It is where you discover whether you command your life force or are commanded by it. The reason this test comes last is because it demands total awareness. Lust attacks not through logic, but through instinct. It bypasses reason and goes straight to the nervous system, the deepest parts of your biology. It calls to the primal self, the ancient animal still living within the divine vessel. That's why it's so powerful. It's not just about the body, it's about the bridge between heaven and earth inside you. The chosen must learn to stand at that bridge and hold both energies, the fire of desire and the light of consciousness, without letting either destroy the other. Most people collapse to one side, repression or indulgence. The asleep suppress desire and call it purity. The unconscious indulge desire and call it freedom. The awakened must do neither. Their path is transformation. When a chosen one falls into lust, it's not because they're weak, it's because they're powerful. They're carrying more energy than most, and if that current isn't directed with discipline, it floods everything. But the lesson of mastery is this: what you don't control controls you. Energy without guidance becomes addiction. Awareness without embodiment becomes illusion. To ascend, you must unite both. Lust is not meant to be rejected. It is meant to be redeemed. The fire that tempts you is the same fire that forges you. If you can sit in that heat without being consumed by it, you transmute it into strength. You become capable of creation, not destruction. Because lust, at its core, is life force, and life force, when refined, becomes divine force. That's why every prophet, monk, warrior, and mystic faced this same trial. They all had to master the body before they could transcend it. The serpent of desire must rise, not to destroy, but to awaken. When you channel that energy upward through discipline, devotion, purpose, and creation, it becomes clarity, wisdom, and divine vision. The same force that once enslaved you becomes the power that liberates you. But make no mistake, this test doesn't come once. It circles back in different forms. Sometimes through temptation, sometimes through attachment, sometimes through emotional dependency. Lust is the shadow that follows power. Every time your vibration rises, the test returns at a higher level, not to punish but to prove. Are you still the master of your energy, or have you fallen back into need? For the chosen, this becomes a lifelong discipline. They learn to honor the body without worshiping it, to feel desire without drowning in it. They learn that celibacy is not the goal, clarity is. Suppression creates shame. Awareness creates mastery. The goal is to move from compulsion to command, to act from consciousness, not craving. When the chosen finally passes this test, their energy becomes unstoppable. Their presence transforms from magnetic to divine. People feel it, the calm, the power, the purity. It's not repression, it's radiant control. The fire still burns, but it burns under guidance. It no longer devours, it illuminates. Lust is the final gate for a reason, because once you master it, nothing external can control you again. You become free, not just from desire, but from manipulation, from weakness, from illusion. You carry the same energy, but now it answers to you. The chosen who master lust ascend not away from the body, but through it. They don't escape desire. They transmute it into destiny, because the final proof of mastery is simple. When the fire no longer burns you, you become the flame. Every chosen one will face the fire of lust, not because they are cursed, but because they are powerful enough to hold divine energy inside a human body. The struggle is sacred. It's the meeting point of heaven and earth, of spirit and flesh, of purity and passion. The battle was never about destroying desire. It was about remembering what it truly is. Lust is life force, the raw essence of creation. The world teaches you to waste it, to chase it, to drown in it. But the awakened learn to wield it. They stop running from the fire and begin to forge themselves within it. Every temptation becomes training. Every fall becomes refinement. Every victory becomes transformation. This is the hidden truth of mastery. You don't overcome lust by denying your humanity. You transcend it by channeling your divinity through it. The chosen who understand this rise above the matrix. They reclaim their energy, their focus, and their power. They stop being slaves to impulse and become guardians of sacred fire. Because when you master desire, you no longer chase what's fleeting. You attract what's divine. And in that balance between control and creation, you discover the truth. The goal was never to escape the fire. It was to become it. Subscribe to join the Guru Clan, a brotherhood of awakened minds, mastering energy, purpose, and desire. Comment below, what's the hardest part of your battle with lust? Share your truth. Your words might help another chosen one rise.